Hi there guys, and welcome to the second episode of Behind the Screens with Dáire McCormack today. I just wanted to give a really quick intro to this and say a massive thanks for the love on the first episode that we had with Max Benica. This is a new project that I'm trying to do just to give people in the esports scene a platform to discuss complex issues such as the mental health side of things that nobody ever wants to talk about because it could be shown as a sign of weakness or whatever to their competitors and things like that. But I think it's a super important thing to talk about and to sort of bring awareness to it and give you guys a very much a look behind the scenes, hence the name of the podcast, into what we go through on a daily basis when it comes to different games and competitions and how we balance the work life versus the personal life and all the challenges that we run into. And yeah, this was a really great chat with Dáire. He was very open. We had a very great open chat about the highs and lows of EWC and the mental toll that took on us once we came home. And if you guys are interested in really seeing the behind the scenes of how EWC went for us at Virtus Pro, then this Saturday at 6 p.m. the full length documentary that we filmed a year ago is finally coming out. Marcus Soholm has done an incredible job with the videography, the editing, and everything, and I cannot wait for you guys to see it, and you hear me talk about it and the podcast come up as well. But yeah, I just want to say a massive thanks for all the love and support on the first episode, and hopefully you guys enjoy the second one. And as I say, don't forget Saturday 6 p.m. the documentary will finally be out. Alright, Dáire, so yeah, welcome on. Yeah, I mean, I guess like from your side, like what's the plan, I guess, like in regards to your racing, how you move forward with your own personal stuff, like where do you see yourself going over the next sort of few months?
Um, Honestly, with iRacing and regards to sim racing in general, I'm just trying to get some iRating at the moment to just build my profile essentially, because I think if I get some iRating, I become useful for special events, and that means I'm just useful across the board then, right? I've got experience in a lot of the like main title sims. I'm ready to do whatever for whatever team, because currently, yourself, we're not exactly well. I mean, you started up your own thing, but I'm uh I'm still freelance, so yeah, it's a tough time at the moment. I think for a lot of people in sim racing, not just us. And moving forward, it's like it's I have the option of, do I want to go down the coaching route? Do I want to go down the content route? Do I want to go down the solely focusing on 2027 being a big thing? Maybe, I don't know. That's the tough part. Um, so that's why I was racing last week at Le Mans, for example, is just to get some I rating. I gained 1,000 I rating just so I can make myself more attractive to teams. So that's currently what I'm at, is trying to build myself in the quote unquote downtime. Um, yeah, yeah, it's a tough decision. Definitely a tough decision.
Yeah, I think the scene over the last 7 or 8 months has definitely taken a big hit with the Rennsport news. As much as Rennsport was sort of laughed at and made fun of and whatever else, right? Like you can't deny the impact that it had and the status that it held. It was still the epitome. Like the game came out of nowhere. In terms of the esports stuff, they did everything right. They managed to pull top drivers from every single other sim onto their game, and it was a completely unproven project. It wasn't released. It was completely fresh, and somehow they managed to secure a deal at EWC, which, if you guys are watching this now on Saturday, the behind the scenes EWC documentary that we filmed whilst we were out there, containing myself and Dáire, the rest of the Virtus guys, that comes out on Saturday. And I watched the video last night. Marcus sent it through to me, and it is like so good. And watching it back, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna miss those LAN events. I'm gonna miss Rennsport for that fact. Like the game was frustrating at points, but like those LAN events were just something else. Like I don't know what you think about it, but nothing comes close. Like, nothing you can do online comes close to how good those events actually were.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like I think a prime example of that is Munich. 2023. You were involved, right? Where
I think so.
where it was where it was the atmosphere was unreal. I don't think it's been like that in sim racing before. I'm not sure. Where, someone would go pole and you've got 500 people completely losing it, you know? You got the best in the world battling it. Like I felt so privileged at the time, especially at the time where I was 18, battling with the best guys in the world. I've watched Baldwin for the previous few years. I'm battling against Chinchik, who's been in LMVS, Rogers, who's one of the best sim racers ever, in my opinion. Um, Beneke is same thing. You spoke to him last week. Um, Everybody knows who he is. So yeah, it was like the privilege to be able to battle with those people was it was out of this world, to be honest. And then to go on pole and have that feeling of like, wow, I've just done that against these people, and then the crowd backs that up, right? Yeah, it was so cool. It's a really indescribable feeling, and it's something to like experience. Was Yeah, it gives you goosebumps for sure.
And I was in the crowd during that because I didn't make the top 12 in the drivers' champ. I think that was the event where Chinchik wiped me out at Spa when we were fighting for the
Yeah,
win. And if I'd gotten a first or second, I would have been in the top 12 and would have been able to be a part of it. But being in the crowd, it was like it wasn't like much compared to other esports. Like, you look at your CS:GOs, your Call of Duties, you name it, any other game, right? Like the crowds are massive. We had like 300 to 500 people crammed into this tiny little room at Motor World in Munich. But when everyone screamed, that you could feel it in your chest. And I remember, like the day before when I was competing, the crowd was a lot smaller, but the headphones that they would give you for these LAN events were insanely good at sound cancelling. Right, they were incredible. After a qualifying run, you could hear the crowd, and you couldn't hear anything like someone shouting next to you. You couldn't hear it. But when the crowd went off, you could actually hear it. And when you finished the qualifying lap and you heard that reaction, it was like, wow, that was just so different. And I just wish when we were at EWC we had a crowd like that, because everything was there to have a big crowd for Rennsport. But for some reason, every arena we got never had a seating area besides probably Gamers 8. And if I recall correctly, Gamers 8, they weren't letting people into the arena to watch it, which
yep,
just boggled my mind. Like, how are you meant to make this sustainable if you're not letting people in to even watch it? And then the year after, we got a round stadium with some benches round the outside that only the managers could sit at.
yeah, yeah. It was. I think we were all a little bit confused as drivers as to why EWC wasn't pushed harder. I think Rennsport as a whole, it could have been a huge thing. Um, where they made it into this big esports thing, and it never really materialized, did it? Like for us, for the drivers, it was brilliant. Like it was so good. But as a viewer and the community base, I think it was done quite wrong, I would say. Like the not releasing of the game when we started driving, the the not pushing it on socials properly, the not really making characters out of us. I think it was just missed opportunities really in a lot of senses. Um and EWC, like you said, with the crowd, it didn't make much sense to us. Where why would you not bring people in to watch this? Like there was people there who knew us in Saudi Arabia, so far away from what you would call, I would say, racing central in Europe. Is you're over in Saudi Arabia and there's lots of people there who knew us, and they weren't allowed in to watch it. So I think it was I don't know, confusing is probably the right word, really, that people weren't allowed in. Yeah, it was sad.
Yeah, I remember during the Gamers 8 thing, I got stopped a couple times for pictures from people who had recognized me, and it was like
Yep.
a really weird feeling. Like, and you were walking down the boulevard, and there was an EWC poster up on, or like a billboard on a big screen, and like I was one of the people that was on that billboard, and it was like, holy shit, like that's when I think it really hit me that like this is completely different to what we're used to. Like we were actually on the world stage for the first time amongst the biggest esports competitors in the world. We were seeing these super famous esports guys that you've seen online for years, and we were sort of, you had to pinch yourself thinking like we're the sim racing equivalent of them. But obviously our sport is just microscopic in comparison to every other game. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there was a combination of mismanagement on a whole. You know, the social presence was definitely one of them. I think the biggest contributing factor, though, as you mentioned, was the game not coming out soon enough. It just took way too
Yeah,
long. Like, people can't get behind a game and support it if they can't physically play it. If all they can see is just the broadcast and that's it, that's very, very difficult to get behind and support. So yeah, it's a shame, a really big shame. I think they definitely squandered the opportunity, and as a driver, it was definitely the best experience in terms of esports I've had. You know, the BOP
yeah,
process was uh, as near as damn it perfect. The car resetting at the line, so there was no qualifying cheese, was great. The fixed setup was nice. Um, you know, there was obviously the usual arguments about whether the BOP, the way it was applied, was good or not, the stewarding decisions and things like that. But I think no matter what you do, you're always going to have that. And you know, I look back at Rennsport fondly, especially that last year where we were on Virtus together. That was, you know, in a situation to win a championship. That was awesome. But you know, we kind of spoke a little bit after the Benica episode came out. You know, talking about like the mental side of things and the pressure and the guilt and things like that. I mean, how did that P2 the EWC kind of affect you? Like, because watching the documentary back yesterday, like I think you rattled off 3 wins in a row to start the finals day. You know, we were like right there with red line, and the rest of us were struggling a little bit. And then yeah, like the rest of us just couldn't really get into gear in comparison to you. So like, how did you sort of how did you decompress after EWC and kind of view your performance versus what we accomplished?
yeah. That was a that was a tough hit for me. I think I I put in my all to that. I think we did as a team. We definitely put in our all. We performed well. I just happened to have, I think, the day of my life really, where everything was falling into place. I was comfortable with the car. I was comfortable with the rig. I felt confident in myself. It was the first time where I think I really felt like, as a whole, we were the best team on the grid. We were better Coanda, we were better than Redline, and that was in my opinion. I think when we were firing on all cylinders, we absolutely could have won that. And it was something that I blame myself for, I think, which was I think it was wrong. I don't think anybody was to blame. It was a combination of us just not putting it fully together as a team, I think. It didn't come together. Um, like there was one qualifying where I got a slowdown in Fuji. Like we'll disregard the eighth race because we know that was pointless, right? But it was the only time I made a mistake in qualifying during the 7 races that actually mattered, and I put that on myself. I was like, if I qualified and I was up there with Kevin to secure that potential 1-2, which it could have been, it was a lap that would have done that with you, and I all I did was beat myself up about it. I was like, I should have been up there. I made that mistake. That would have been enough points to get us into finals mode. It would have been at Jeddah. We would have won. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
just a cycle of thoughts where I'm like, I'm at fault. I'm at fault. Why did you do this? Why did you do this? You know, why didn't you break later into the bus stop so you didn't get taken out? Like it's a ridiculous thing to say in my head, but it's something that I still blame myself for. And I think I'm only really getting over that now. Um, Yeah, I really believe we could have won it, and I just happened to have the day of my life, and that was that, I think.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you remember me saying it when we were out there, but I think I said to everyone at some point, like before the final started, I said we're all allowed one mistake. Yeah, like everyone can have a quality where you get a slowdown. It's fine. We're pushing the limits. The pressure is on. Like this is the most pressure you're going to face. Like you can have a mistake. No one's going to beat you up about it. I think the problem that we really ran into was when you were firing on all cylinders, I wasn't, and we sort of were chopping and changing. Like I spent most of the day in and around sixth, I think on average. I was very kind of mid pack. I think I had one quali where I got slowed down at Daytona. Um, I think the rest of them it was just poor quality. I know I had an issue on one of the days at Monza as well. Like basically, like there's actually a shot in the documentary of us two in the back of the car on the way to the venue on the final of or the morning of the final, and you say our only job is just 1-2. We just need a 1-2. It's all we need to do. and you were getting the ones, I just couldn't get the twos, right? That was the problem, I think, is I was like, on a good race, I was third or fourth, and then on average, I drove average that day, I was in around sixth, and I had a couple shaky ones where I was outside the top eight, so yeah, I mean, it was always going to be tough for us, right? Like, we had two rookies in the roster as well, two insanely talented drivers. They'd done great considering the lack of experience that they had. They had 2 years to try and catch up, basically, in the span of a few months.
Absolutely.
And I think the fact that we said it on the day, like, and it's in the documentary as well, the fact that we knocked Coanda out of upper bracket was like, that showed like the potential that we had. And
It's huge.
that's why I said to Max that I blamed myself largely, because no one can blame you for having a slowdown at Fuji, right? That is what it is. And at Daytona, you were in a 2v1 going into the bus stop. You can't afford to let them make that move on you. You can't afford to let the second red line car through. So you've got to fight it, and when you fight it, accidents happen. It is what it is. If my average was third or fourth instead of sixth, then we would have had enough points to get the finalist mode, and then you wouldn't be feeling the pressure at Fuji to do what you did, right? It's just unfortunate that the one race I actually got my shit together at Fuji and put it second, you had that mistake, and that was the problem, is that when you were firing, I wasn't, and we ended up just falling short. And I think race 7, you actually did win that race at Jeddah, right? So if we were in finalist mode, we would have won it. So I think that's why I was so hard on myself. And again, I've only recently gotten over it, I think, but it's definitely since coming back to iRacing, I've felt less confident than I did when I started Rennsport. That definitely knocked my confidence a lot, just across the board. So that is why, I've got the mental coach, and I'm kind of working through everything that I've just sort of, I don't know, packaged up in a box and put to the back of my mind, kind of thing. But no, I mean, for sure, like, it was a great tournament, and we had a lot of fun, but it was disappointing to fall short.
Yeah, I think it really was. And as I said before, I think we all felt it. We all felt it in our own way. Um, yeah, it was a tough thing to deal with for sure. I think we were really hungry for that actual championship. It wasn't so much the money. I don't know about you, but for me, it was never the money. I just wanted to win,
Yeah.
and having that pure focus on winning, and then it never really materializing was tough. It was really tough. And I found it quite tough that there wasn't a drivers' championship as well, because it felt like I finally had my true opportunity where I was in tune with the game, in tune with the car. I felt comfortable and confident, and then there was no way to really prove that, in a sense, if you know what I mean. You're right.
Yeah.
So it was. I found that really tough, and it did take a while to get over. But and it's good to speak about things like this and get it off your chest. I think for both of us, um, going through it like we did a couple of days ago was nice. Um, yeah, it's something that people need to, I think, understand about esports and probably racing in general. Is stuff like this can be really hard on your mental, and a lot of racing is a mental game. So it's something that people really need to be careful of if you want to get into it, I would say.
Yeah, because especially when you get to the top level, it's not so much about pace; it's more about the mental.
Yeah.
If you compare our pace in practices and stuff, on paper, we should have been right next to each other on the grid every single race, right? You in front of me probably 8 or 9 times out of 10, but we would have been very close. But the mental side, I didn't feel comfortable in the Aston. I didn't feel comfortable with the amount of angle that we had to use into the corners and things like that. So I could never quite just let flow state drive for me. I always had an element of thinking about what I was doing, which, yourself, as soon as you think about what you're doing, it goes wrong.
Yep.
And I think, just to kind of touch on the team championship aspect, like, that definitely is hard mentally. Like, I find it easier to let go of a bad drivers championship than I do a teams championship, because it's not in a drivers championship that you can go, right, that was shit, I've let myself down, I'll come back next year. Whereas with the teams championship, and this is where I really beat myself up, was I felt like I'd let everyone else down, and I felt really, really guilty because of how good you'd done. If we'd all had a shit day, then I would have been like, okay, we just stunk. Like, we analyze, we go again, whatever. But the fact that you had such a good day, and I couldn't be there to support you how I was supposed to, because ultimately that was my role at VP, was just to be the supporting role. And if you have a bad day, I pick up the slack, and that was kind of how it. Don't know how you view it, but from my point, it was like you're the top dog. I was the supporting act, very, very close. Always make sure one of us are there. I felt massively guilty for letting you and the team down, for investing so much in me, and having that expectation and just not delivering. Right, that ate me alive for months. But I started to kind of get over it at the end of last year and be like, okay, 26 lessons learned, we go again. And then as soon as I started getting over it, bang, Rennsport's out of EWC, released from your contract, no opportunity to come back and try again. And then all the emotions kind of came flooding back, thinking that was it. That was my only chance to win a championship, and I didn't do well enough on that day, and I've let Dáire down, I've let Anton down, I've let everyone, and that the first couple months of this year, it was the same thing. All that guilt that I felt, in the middle of last year, it all came back again. I just couldn't shift it.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think we all felt it. We definitely all felt it. It was just rough. Um, it is a shame that Rennsport's gone for sure. I think just touching on that, it's something that I think like really showed the potential of drivers, like the true potential, because we were all on pretty much the most level playing field we've ever seen, where the qualifying was identical. Like there was no warm up strats like iRacing. You couldn't cheese anything. You had to cross the line and do a lap. It was all up to you. Um, and how good your opponents were was also up to you. To a certain extent, you had to go and bop their cars, be it the Merc, the Porsche, the Audi, the BMW, whatever. You had to go and drive their cars in BOP testing, and you had to make it as bad as possible. Really was the aim, right? Or as equal. So yeah, whoops. Yeah, I think we did our best on that, and that's something that Rennsport did right. That's definitely something that Rennsport did right, and we'll miss that. I think we'll miss that as drivers, because now we're back to iRacing where it's a little bit more, you need to get the maximum out of the car with the setup, with the warm up, with how that is and how you practice in the different conditions. It's much more, I would say, like real life, where Rennsport was much more esports orientated for sure, where you could really see who was the best driver and who was doing the best on the day, whatever. That's what it was all about. And that's something that we'll miss in the community, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and you know, I I remember talking to a couple of the Rennsport staff members at the summit at the start of this year, when you and I competed for Chadwick and EMM, and a couple of them kept saying, it will be back, it will be back. They'd spoken to EWC, they were saying it was going to come back, but I can't see any proof of that being possible, like whatsoever, because you look at the reviews on Steam, it stinks. They had a whole spring season of R1. I didn't see one post about it online. They didn't promote it. They didn't post about the results. Nobody knows what went on or who was involved or anything. And then Max mentioned the other day that there's going to be a fall season.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
you and I are in the middle of the space. Anything that's getting talked about in the esports stuff, we know about it because of the circles that we're in and the people that we're around. You're going to find out about it somehow. But yeah, I'm finding it out because Max knows it's happening, but Rennsport haven't said nothing. And to me, that's just baffling.
Yeah. It's really confusing. It's definitely really confusing. Yeah, I don't understand it. I think it's hard to put into words what Rennsport is like, as an organization, and yeah, they need to really get their priorities straight. Is probably the most blunt way to put it.
Yeah, I think as well their success was always going to be limited because of the decision they made to put esports first. That, I mean, you remember when it was announced, like, there's going to be an esports competition before the game's ever out, people straight away had a negative outlook on it, right? And I think the duration that went on for only made things worse. And then when it eventually did release, people came into it expecting it to feel a certain way based on what they'd seen, and realized that it's not like that at all. Um, it was a weird game to get used to. There was some really strange characteristics, but when you wrapped your head around the physics and the tire model and the driving style required, it was genuinely one of the most satisfying experiences I've had in quite a few different aspects. I mean, you remember the build we had where there was very little slip angle and TC was actually usable and things. I mean, that was the best sim racing experience I've had in a car, like driving wise. And I think I was like second or third in the drivers' championship that season. Like you and I were both killing it. I was able to execute. The car felt comfortable. I understood it. It made sense. It felt very much like iRacing, but it didn't have iRacing's drawbacks with the tires overheating randomly and all the other stuff that comes with the iRacing package. That Rennsport package was awesome. And then right before EWC, they changed the physics and blew it up again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we were in for the shot at the championship on those physics. The car was nice to drive, I would say, for the first time. Not just the physics, I mean the actual Mercedes as well was actually quite good for once. And it yeah, it just blew up in our faces really, didn't it? We got probably the worst physics set we'd experienced right after that. Like just going into EWC, it's like, oh yeah, you've got 1 day to prepare for BOP. So obviously that blew up in everyone's faces. Where if you've only got one driver in a car or two drivers in a car, um, that have to, go and bop other people's cars, something's gonna go wrong. And we saw what went wrong. The BMW was not BOP because there was not enough people on it. There wasn't enough drivers against the BMW to go and BOP it properly. So we ended up with this horrible scenario of the BMW being what 3/10 down the road to us, and we had to deal with the most. I think we were the only car without a front suspension update or something like front geometry update or something really weird like
Something
that.
like that, yeah.
And it made the Mercedes, especially a Monza, I don't know if you remember, absolutely horrible to drive.
The
Like you go over
pogo
the
stick.
bumps, yeah, a pogo stick. Like you're trying to do a super pole and you hit a curb, but the car comes off of it, bounces like 5 times, and you're like, it's threatening to go into the gravel. You're like, how am I meant to do going into the event? Like, how am I meant to do the lap of my life in one attempt? Like, it's just, yeah, it was crazy. I think it was absolutely crazy what they've done. They built the best version of the game, like by far, and then went totally backwards on that, and we ended up with one of the worst.
It's interesting you mentioned Monza because I remember when we were there at LAN, I started getting quite motion sick and getting a headache after like practicing Monza for a while and like one of the free practice sessions. I got out the rig and I was like, I feel ill because you'd run like your head static with the car in Rennsport because the whole motion thing just felt off in that game. Like I run with the head motion on in iRacing just as it is default because to me that's just normal. Like it's got that kind of gyroscopic effect, but with Rennsport it's like your head was super glued to the dashboard. And with how bouncy that car was, you'd be coming through the first left of like the second chicane, for example, and you're looking for the apex of the right hander, and it's just going like that on the screen. It's just bouncing,
Yeah.
and you can't. It's impossible. It was impossible to judge where the car was in relation to the curb or like how to. Because the line was very specific as well. If you hit it at a certain angle, it would go over and sit. But when you're literally going through the chicane like this, how are you meant to be able to line anything up, right? So it was just it was horrible. But I guess to kind of move on from the Rennsport stuff, obviously you came from ACC before. I mean, from what you experienced in Rennsport compared to what you experienced at ACC, like how was the transition for you coming from what was a very successful ACC segment of your career? How did you? I guess how was ACC for you, and then the transition to Rennsport, sort of going from before to after.
I found the transition very tough, if I'm honest. It wasn't so much the driving aspect. Like I was always confident in my abilities, whatever, call that ego or cockiness, whatever. I was always confident in what I could do. It was the problem for me was I loved ACC so much at the time when Rennsport came along. We were still on my favorite patch back then, which was 1.8. I think people who play ACC will know what that is, and that. I think that was a special era for the game where we had so much active in the game. There was a huge SRO presence. The the viewership was massive on the GT World accounts. We had like David Tanitza, Baldwin, myself, Blyer, Gronewold, Pfeffer, huge names. We're all building an ACC. Um, and then all of a sudden, I'm told, you know, there's this big startup. Williams we want to put you into that. And I'm like, okay. I go into it and I don't enjoy it. I was like, it's not ACC, I'm not enjoying it. So that first season was, I think, funny enough, I threw away a championship in the first Rennsport season because I didn't care about the game. I didn't enjoy it. I never liked it. Um, I was like, I just want to go back to ACC, and that's what I did. That's really what I did during 2023. I was in between the pair of them, and then later down the year, I decided, okay, Rennsport is the way forward. So that's what I did. But that the ACC stint of my career, I would say the end of 2020. It really picked up in 2021 though. Until the start of 2023. That's really when I had my stint, and I achieved a lot. I definitely achieved a lot, and as a team, we achieved a lot. During 2023, even while we did Rennsport, we won the biggest championship in ACC. We won the IGTCE championship, which is all the biggest teams in ACC, the biggest teams in the world, going against each other in an endurance series. So yeah, I was very proud of that. I was very proud of what I achieved in ACC. When it came to like the Logitech championships, that was very much a solo championship, and it came along very quickly. You had 3 races to win it, and yeah, I'm pretty sure I wiped all 3 races. So it was something where I felt confident and comfortable, and it was, I think, still to me, it was the best sim I ever played, and it's the most fun I've ever had. It was it just has a soft spot. I started on it when I was like 16, 15, something like that, and then I went through all the way till I was 19, 20. So yeah, I really grew up on it, and that's where I came of age. And yeah, I will miss it for sure because ACC is not coming back, unfortunately.
Yeah, ACC is a game I never got a chance to properly try. I remember seeing the posts on Twitter and Instagram and stuff about what was going on over there, and sometimes I would click on one of your streams or Baldwin's stream or whoever, and kind of watch how you guys were driving it, and I would think very different to iRacing, but it doesn't look horrendous, right? I was very much like an iRacing mind. Like iRacing's the epitome. When I went to Rennsport, my mind was sort of opened a little bit, and I realized actually, okay, now you know what? Like there's a lot more in sim racing than I was giving it credit for. Um, and yeah, I mean, by the time I sort of considered getting into ACC, I think they moved to 1.9, and from what I heard, it was just horrendous. I don't know what version they're on now, but I've not seen any news out of ACC for a long time. Nothing of like major relevance in terms of esports stuff anyway. It's all kind of stayed on iRacing, and even then it's sort of fallen by the wayside recently, as we'll sort of touch on shortly. But yeah, like, I mean, in terms of ACC, like, what was it for you? Would you say that just made that game as good as it was?
I think it was the only game where it had proper TC. Like it was. This is just, we're mainly talking about GT3s here, right? Because that's what we're we're experienced in mainly, and the way the TC worked and the way you could move around the rear, it felt so natural. Like on 1.8, it was just so good. Like I can't describe how good it was. It was amazing. We had too much front slip angle. I think everybody knows that. We were able to chuck the front end a little bit too hard, and we're able to scrub them. But if you really focused on how the car felt and like the FFB was easily the best in sim racing. Like it was not close. That you felt everything through the wheel. You felt exactly what you needed. You felt the TC interruption. You felt the ABS interruption, but not like in LMU where it shakes the wheel and the wheel goes insane. Right? It's over the top. In ACC, you felt everything through it, and even on the most basic of equipment, it felt amazing. So that's one thing it did. It did just perfect, in my opinion. Was they had everything right, and then it went to 1.9, and they tried to add like sidewall flexing to make the cars feel even more realistic, and that went very badly wrong. So we ended up with TC off and like ABS one and just ridiculous things. Stuff you don't want to see in sim racing. So it was, yeah, it was a bit annoying, and like I said before, it will for sure be missed.
Yeah, I mean, from how you're describing it, it sounds like on 1.8 it had the downsides with the front slip angle, sure, but as you say, the TC did its job properly. It's not like it is currently in iRacing, or it wasn't. Rennsport actually was quite similar to how iRacing is now, where as soon as that TC kicked in, you had no power. Like, even on like the lowest TC setting, it would just come on, and you would just see the delta going red. It was quicker to just slide the car out the corner with nothing. Um, but it sounds like in ACC, yeah, like they had the right balance where it's there to support you, not hinder you, but it's also not abusable to where you just run max TC and you just thump the throttle everywhere and it takes no skill, right? That you could lean on the car, which is something that in iRacing you can do, but in a very limited aspect. You'll know yourself from doing more iRacing recently, like you can lean on the car, but the difference between the grip building when you hit the peak grip and then you go over it, the grip just drops. There's no like sort of curve where you can tell when you've gone over the limit because it slides a little bit. It just snaps and you're dead. Whereas ACC, it sounds like it definitely had more of that sort of lateral support where you could lean on it without going too far into the Rennsport style.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. That's exactly what it was. It was, you could lean into it, you could enjoy it, you could have fun with it. And that was, I think, probably the only sim where you could have fun with it from a beginner standpoint, an intermediate standpoint, and an esports standpoint. It was just perfect. It really was.
So I guess like recently now we've seen you obviously moving more into iRacing as Rennsport and ACC have fallen by the wayside and we're sort of left in a weird scenario where there's nothing else really to do. Specifically from an esports aspect, we keep being promised LMVS from LMU, but every time we hear about it, it's either not happening or it's been delayed another few months or whatever as they work through the issues on that side. I mean, everyone's a lot of top esports guys have moved over to iRacing recently and are just sort of doing daily races because that's all there is to do, right? I mean, how have you found that transition? Like, what are your thoughts on where iRacing is as a sim or game currently in terms of like tire model, car physics, you name it?
I think my opinion is slightly skewed on iRacing because I've never particularly enjoyed the tire model. I think it's too extreme. I think it's far too extreme. I think a lot of people will share that sentiment. Um, I also think the downforce models on the GT3s are just wrong. To be honest, like you put low wing on and like look at Le Mans Porsche cars, you're borderline counter steering through the whole thing. Like it's just crazy.
Yep.
I don't think that's accurate at all. The car should be twitchy, yeah. I get that. It shouldn't be planted, but it shouldn't be on the edge like it is, like you have one micro slide in the first Porsche curve. Like you're at what, 215, 216K minimum speed. You have a little micro slide and all of a sudden your rear tires are 500 degrees is what it feels like. And
Yeah.
you come into the next corner, you're sideways, and then it gets worse, and then it gets worse, and then you're spun. So it's just, I think it's so over the top that I can't compliment it. It's just, it feels a bit ridiculous. Um, and I don't know how, like, I get that the tire model is very complex in iRacing. They seem to have gone down a route where they've added in a million different aspects and they can't really go back on it. But it's something that they've got to work on. It's got to be more drivable. Like, sure, I think it works for outside of esports, but if you want to be like 3K I rating and above, you start to really feel how unenjoyable it can be. I think, yeah, it's definitely something that I think you either love or hate it, and I'm definitely more on the hate side if I'm completely honest. And this is just mainly speaking about GT3, but there's very little in iRacing that isn't similar to that, to be honest, in regards to the tires. Everything kind of seems to just go on fire with a small little mistake, right? Like you can't even go into the ABS. That's I don't understand that. Like what they have right is you're able to trail into the corner. That's correct. They have that bit right, but you can't smash the brake initially. You should be able to do that. The car should be able to take that. You should be able to hit the ABS a little bit and not destroy the tire. So I think that's something that they have to really work on, to be honest. And I think coming from esports competitors, they don't care. Like when we complain about it, they don't care. We're not their main customer base. Their main customer base is 1.5K I rating, right? Like that is the common, or like the most, uh I would say there's the most people at 1.5K, right?
Somewhere
I
around
I
there, yeah,
believe.
like 90% of the um, iRacing user base is sub 2K, something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's the people that they care about. Um, and I'm not saying those people are bad or wrong or anything. I'm just saying that it works for those people, so they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care about our opinion. They don't care about esports in general because it's just such a niche little thing that they won't help push forward. And I think if iRacing helped push esports forward, it would be a huge thing. It would definitely be a huge thing. Like they've got a massive player base. They like sure they put a blog up. They maybe make a couple of posts. They'll show us on Instagram every now and again, and that's that. You know, they satisfy us to a very small degree. I think is probably the best way to say it. Like even the special events. I remember years ago they were a big thing. You know, I would tune in every now and again. I wasn't even involved in iRacing, and I would tune in now and again. I'd be like, you know, this is cool to watch. It's all the biggest teams in the world going at it, and for pride more than anything. But now you look at it, and I'm like, it's not really what it was, is it? Like people don't really care about them as much. People are putting less effort into some of them. It's just not as good. Um, and I think it really like drives home the decline in esports at the moment. Is is if you look at iRacing, you can see how bad it's become. Really, like even PESC. I think a lot of people are disappointed with PESC. There's a 10K prize pool, and then it's rumored that you can go and drive a real car, I believe, at the end of it. I think that's what's going on there. So it's yeah, it's a big change. You can't really make a living out of it at the moment. Well, sorry, you definitely can't make a living out of it at the moment. You need to either be doing setups, coaching, content, blah blah blah. So it's something that I think iRacing should absolutely help. You know, they can grow the industry, and if esports gets big, their game only gets bigger. Like that's just the way it is. Content will get bigger. All of that stuff will get bigger. Money will definitely be coming into the game, and they they don't seem to want it, and I find it baffling. I really do.
Yeah, there's a couple of really good points that I want to touch on, but I just want to start by clarifying, like, if you are a sub 2K rating driver, we're not slagging you off by any means. Like,
No,
your
not at all.
guys' opinion is still just as valid as ours. I think our frustration is that iRacing accommodate to the majority, which I agree with and I understand it because that's how they stay in business, right? If 50 esports guys stop playing the game, they don't give a fuck, right? iRacing doesn't change their day-to-day operations whatsoever. But I think what's frustrating for us, and it's been like this for sort of 5 or 6 years, and if you've listened to the Benica episode, he shares the same opinion as you, is that the Tyre model is just it's too far. It has gone way too far, and we're not asking for the cars to be harder to drive. We're asking for them to be easier to drive, and I think that's what a lot of game developers are sort of scared of, is when they listen to our inputs and what we have to say, they instantly assume that if they accommodate to us, the rest of the sim won't like it. But actually, what we're trying to do is make the cars more forgiving, is make them a bit more, a little bit softer, like they are in real life. I mean, you watch a real life on board at Nordschleife, Le Mans, wherever you want, a low wing circuit, and as you say, like, in iRacing, it's like 5 degrees of steering lock to get through the Porsche curves the whole way. You know, like you tip it in with 5 degrees, and then you just have the wheel straight through the corner, and you're just balancing it on the left rear. And we've heard similar um, complaints from Moritz over the last several months about low downforce GT3s in iRacing. When you have to put a low downforce config on the car, it is one of the worst driving experiences you can have in sim racing, because the car just turns into a shopping trolley above 160, 180 kph, because the front just goes, and then the rear's just sort of swinging about, and it feels like you've got rear wheel steering. It feels more like a forklift than it does a racing car. There's no give. More than 30 degrees lock, you're understeering. Less than that, the car's turning, but the slightest little mistake, like you drop the throttle slightly too quickly, you're spinning. You apply the brake slightly too quickly, and you snag the ABS, you've spun. So the operating range and the performance window is so microscopic. I mean, it's like that at all downforce levels, but at the higher downforce stuff, you don't just immediately crash, right? You just lose time. But on the lower downforce stuff, there is absolutely no room for error whatsoever. And my biggest complaint with these GT3s right now, I think, is that there's far too much aero in general. I don't know if you've kind of felt the same thing from how you've driven, but I feel like mechanically, the cars just feel really, really stiff. Like there's very little that you can see the car like pitching and rolling through the corners as you go through changes of direction. The car is moving around, but it doesn't feel like that. They don't feel heavy. They feel like formula cars, and the faster you go, the more it becomes apparent that the cars just have so much downforce on them, more so on the front end than the rear, that it makes them incredibly difficult to drive. And then, yeah, as you say, you combine that with the tyre model that is insanely unforgiving, you end up with an experience that is just not enjoyable. You know, there's you can just lose the car, and as a driver, you think, what have I done wrong? And you compare telemetry, and it's like you lifted 5% more 7 meters later, and you've crashed. Something that small. I mean, 7 meters when you're doing 220 kph is there's no way to differentiate that from inside the car, right? No matter how good you are. So, yeah, I mean, you're definitely everything that you're saying is being echoed around, amongst the rest of us. And I think to touch on the esports aspect as well, like with PESC, for me, it was such a disappointment when it came out, like the announcement, because I wanted to do PESC again. I wanted to get back to what I was doing before, and trying to get the results I was having before, and enjoying it, or as much as I could back then with Break Dragon and all the other stuff that went on. But I think it's a 30k prize pool for PESC, and then the top 5 go to a shootout. So just for talking sake, right, you could win the full series, and then you don't get selected for the shootout. You can go to the shootout, but you won't get selected for the real life drive. The guy who finishes 4th in the championship could get it if he's a little bit younger, a little bit fitter, more marketable. It could be any reason that Porsche decide to take anyone from that top 5, and then of course you've got the question of, are they going to favour the Porsche Coanda drivers if they finish in the top 5? Because you've got factory Porsche drivers racing in the Porsche Championship, which previously wasn't allowed. Porsche said that they weren't allowed to do it, but now they are allowing it. So there's going to be questions, because there's going to be a Porsche Coanda guy in there, at least one, right? With how good their roster is and how quick they are as a team, there's going to be at least one of them in there. So the Redline guys are probably not going to be, or the Verstappen guys, sorry, they're probably not going to be best pleased if one of them don't get picked.
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's going to be an element of, there's favoritism here. Like, can you imagine Verstappen went and did the same thing? He also had his own championship. He had, a huge championship where, oh, you can come drive with me and Chris Lollam at the end of this. We're going to put you in a car. Um, and then, he ends up picking one of his own drivers. That's going to be highly contested, I think, on media. And I think, yeah, it's not like the Coanda guys won't be deserving of it. Some of them, like, absolutely, they are deserving of. They're incredible drivers, an incredible team. Nobody is against that. But it's the fact that, you know, oh, they could just pick one of their own. It's like, we've given everybody the opportunity on paper, but at the end of the day, we've picked our own. So I think that's the general view. That's not really how I feel, because if I'm honest, I don't really care. They can pick one of their own if they want. I'm not bothered. But I think that's the general view, and probably how it looks. It's just not good. It really isn't good.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree as well. Like, that you can't argue the fact that they don't deserve it, because you look at what Rogers is doing right now. In I think it's the GT4s he's racing. Like, he's up straight in a real life car, and he's right at the front. He just recently won at Knock Hill at the weekend, so that you cannot deny the fact that these guys are serious wheelers, right? Like, they've proven it time and time again. You name it, Alejandro, Charlie Collins, Dane Warren. You name any of them, right? They deserve the seat. But I think you're always just going to be in a situation where, like, no matter what you do, they're going to get some backlash from it, right? And it kind of takes me back to, this is some proper sim racing lore, right? I think this was 2017, I think it was, right? Or 2019. I don't remember what year it was. It was the year that Coanda won the VRS GT iRacing World Championship. Back then it was like a GTEs, I think we were racing in, and it was like, 2 to 4 hour length races in a World Championship format. It was awesome, right? We had an endurance series that was an actual World Championship, and I think in the last round at Kota, something happened. I think Rogers crashed into one of the Red Bull cars, Freddie Rasmussen's car, and Freddie went into the private WCS forum that only staff and World Championship drivers could see, and he went in and made a thread called Rigged Shit Series, and he put a massive spiel in there about, favoritism with the stewarding and BOP and things like that. Went on a rant. Some of it was, you could argue it had some weight to it. Ultimately, I don't know if it's true or not. I imagine it wasn't, but I mean, I think he got permanently banned from World Championship competition after that, because he just lost his head one night and after the championship, because I think Rogers took them out or done something. A Kwanda car done something. I don't want to say it was Rogers, but a Kwanda car made contact with Freddie's team and cost them the championship, and they didn't get a penalty for it. So, there's always going to be this element of conflict of interest. It's always a tricky one when you have a company or a manufacturer who sponsor a team also host a championship at the same time. Like me, I don't like it. I'm not a fan of that kind of thing. But I guess if they put the money up, what can you do, right? If iRacing accept the deal, they accept the deal. And back in the day when Rogers and all those guys joined Porsche Kwanda, they weren't allowed to compete in PESC. That was part of their deal, so that you couldn't argue that there was a conflict of interest or favoritism or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I'm interested to watch PESC. I think the changes they've made to the P Cup have been bad, like reducing the draft overall. I agree, it's now more realistic than it was before. It was overkill, but I think to make esports racing exciting, you have to rip up the rulebook a little bit when it comes to trying to replicate real life, right? Our esports races are never going to be as interesting as real life because it's not real cars, it's not real sounds. You haven't, if you go to the event, you can't, you don't get the smell and the sound and the feeling that you get watching a sim race. So we need to do other things to make it interesting. We need to think outside the box, increase the slipstream a little bit to where arguably it's unrealistic, make the tyres a bit more forgiving so that guys can slide around a bit more and have these big massive dives without having the tyre turn into the surface of the sun. All these different things, I don't know what you think about it, but we saw it with Rennsport where it wasn't very realistic at all. There were some aspects that weren't a million miles away, but it wasn't a realistic sim fundamentally. But the racing in general was a bit better when we had more slipstream, obviously.
Yeah, I think that the racing in Rennsport is probably the best we've ever seen, especially at the top echelon of esports. Like it wasn't really close. Like we saw dives, we saw battles, we saw some of the some of the best side by side action in sim racing, and that's all because the slipstream was a touch too strong and the tires were slightly abusable. Not to an extreme degree, but they were just a little bit beyond what's actually realistic, and it made for a perfect show. And yeah, I think that's, like you said, you need to rip up the rule book slightly. You need to go outside the bounds a little bit and explore. So hopefully iRacing come around to a lot of it. I think they need to come around to the fact that they need to push esports a little bit more. It'll help grow. It'll help give more people jobs. To be honest, it'll help grow the sim racing scene, given how big it is. And yeah, just pushing us a little bit harder and pushing everybody a little bit harder.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, even to use F1 esports as an example, right? The racing that's on display there, you compare that to real life, polar opposites. But I mean, fuck me, F1 esports is a hell of a lot more interesting to watch than the real thing.
Yeah,
Having like 3/10 spread in quality across the entire field, and guys losing half a tenth and getting knocked out in qualifying. Then in the races, there's just constant action. The cars are close. There's moves happening and things like that. It's interesting to watch, as much as the broadcast doesn't look great with the cars floating around and the onboards looking a little bit janky and things like that. It's still an interesting watch, and it's so frustrating, right? Because if we could like combine like ACC's like ABS, TC, and Tyre Model, combine that with iRacing's like just core fundamentals, and then have the raceability that F1 esports have. Imagine how fucking good that product would be. both to drive and to watch.
Unbelievable.
You know,
Yeah.
it's so frustrating because I'm always sitting there going, if we could just have this from this game and I could just put it into this one, it would be mint. It's like that with Rennsport. Like if I could have the Rennsport braking traces where you could slam the brakes and use the ABS and then trail off to manage the rotation on the way in. If I could just have that in iRacing, it would be so much better. And you know, a bit more stability within iRacing. You know, give us a bit more to lean into. Give us a bit more security, right? iRacing, I've always said, feels great when you drive a second or more off. As soon as you start getting within, and I've seen it with coaching clients myself, like I've gotten a guy from 1.5 seconds off to about 0.8 off, and as he's gotten faster, he's gone, wow, the tires just keep exploding on me. I'm like, yeah, welcome. I'm like, welcome to what we have to deal with on a daily basis, and the faster you go, the worse it gets. The more anal you have to be with every little thing that you do. 5% too much brake into this corner, bang, tire dead. You know, slight wobble into this section, bang, tire dead. And it has such a knock-on effect onwards that it makes it incredibly frustrating to race and to drive. You can't just send someone. If you're 0.2 back in any other game, like in Rennsport, you're fucking in. You are in. You've got a sniff. You're making a move. In iRacing, you're sitting 0.2 behind into a heavy braking zone. You go, oh, hold on a minute. I could go for the move, but I'm going to lose 0.6 over the next 2 laps because my tyres are going to explode. So I'm going to lift off and just save fuel. And then my tyre's going to be really good, and then I can just coast past them later on. Or pass them in the pits. As soon as you go for a move, the car just explodes and it melts. And yeah, if we could just combine a few different aspects from different games, I think we would have the ultimate product. And I think iRacing need to... I need to be careful with what I say because I know there was a lot of outburst about this years ago when F1 Esports had different physics for their F1 Esports versus what the public game had. I can see though why they do that, or why that could be a good thing to do. I think having a slightly tweaked physics set for esports would make the product so much more watchable and enjoyable. If they had a way to just increase the slipstream a little bit, decrease the sensitivity of the tyre by a few %, and give us that as a package to go and race, things would be a hell of a lot more interesting, especially in like the sprint format stuff with PESC. You know, I think PESC is going to be a snoozer this year. I really do, because the slipstream just isn't there.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I agree with everything that you said. I agree with absolutely everything. Um, I think something to just say again is we are not slagging anybody.
No.
This is completely from an esports standpoint is what needs to be done for us and what needs to be done to preserve such a competitive space, I believe. Like you can't I racing it feels like they kind of want to push it out or like kind of push it away a little bit, and they have been for a while, and they've been quite successful in that. So I just I just hope they come around to it. I really do. I hope they come around to it and help bring the scene back because right now it's definitely on its knees.
And I think iRacing really is our only hope, right? iRacing are in with quite a lot of big manufacturers and racing series like IMSA and, you know, the iRacing Coca-Cola NASCAR series. That's huge.
Mhm.
You know, that's massive for the oval guys as much as it gets criticised, especially for what happened recently at Indianapolis. I don't know if you've seen that. That was interesting to say the least. Basically, everyone ran out of fuel under the last green white checkered. So some people were going from like 38th to second. They were just full throttling it through a bunch of cars because they had fuel, and then nobody knew who'd won. You know, so I think Parker White's engineer knew the rules about under caution. You know, you need to stay behind the car ahead of you, but when they run out of fuel, you can then pass them and things like that. It was chaos. Like, I'd recommend everyone to go back and watch the end of that broadcast because it was hilarious. And actually, DJ EJ, he made a really, really good video actually explaining how it happened and went into the replay and showed everything. So I definitely recommend watching his video about it because it was, yeah, really, really good. But yeah, no, definitely, like, I can't see any other outlet giving us a place to race other than iRacing. You know, we've got MC Esports coming up at the end of the year, thank God. At least it's something that's not PESC. hopefully IndyCar comes back as well. That could be a really good project for iRacing to keep a hold of long term and try and make it a year-long series. You know, I don't like this World Championship condensed into 3 months and then it's over kind of thing. Like back when I started, it was a full year. You started in March, you finished in October. You know, they replicated real life in that regard. I think the calendars need to be released way sooner as well for us to have personal lives. I mean, since having kids, for me, I've realized it even more where my time isn't just at their disposal. I'm getting pulled in so many different directions between the work I've got to do within sim racing to just earn a living versus having a family as well. To then have iRacing drop a championship announcement a month or two before it starts. How am I meant to book a family holiday? You know, I can use the previous year as a rough guesstimate, but you know, there's always going to be a week here and there where it changes. And if I want to go away for a week and there's only 2 weeks between the race, I need to hope to hell that the race happens on the Sunday. I can go on the Monday, and then have a week to prep for the next one. But for some reason, that there seems to be limitations. We saw it with PESC this year. The announcement came out like a month before or something like that. It was crazy close. And for us esports guys, we can't have a life. Like, you always have to be on standby waiting for something because, you know, your team expects you to be in there. You want to be in there to make prize money, to, you know, put a bit of money into your savings, save up for a house, save up for a holiday, whatever you want to use the money for. You know, the prize money is incredibly important, and right now there is no prize money to be made. And when there is, the announcement comes out literally weeks before it's due to start.
Yep. Yep. And that's exactly what happened with IMSA. Um, like it's only been announced what uh was it last week?
Last week, yeah.
Or yeah, it's only been announced last week and the qualifiers are in what, a couple of weeks,
I
I
think it's
believe.
the end of August, yeah.
The end of August. Yeah. Like I I have a holiday booked for the end of August, which I'm on an early sabbatical right now, obviously for given reasons. And I I have a holiday for my dad's birthday. His 60th birthday is at the end of the month and we're all going away. So if that's been booked for a while and now all of a sudden I've got IMSA at the end of the month. So it's kind of I'm like, okay, that's come out of nowhere a little bit. Yeah, it's happened so much in sim racing where all of a sudden there's a competition. You can't book anything and you're like, well, it's really hard to maintain a life, maintain a romantic partner or whatever and have a life like that. It's really tough because if this is your living and then all of a sudden, oh, my job is now just completely different to what it was a month ago. It's hard. It's very hard on all of us. So hopefully that becomes, I would say, more consistent in the future.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the year where they announce that there's a race day on my girlfriend's birthday, because my God, it's gonna be a hard conversation. I mean, I actually remember what happened the first the Gamers 8 for Rennsport, right? My girlfriend's mum was getting married, so I was like, "Yep, I will come to the wedding. I'll be there." Blah blah blah. A month before the wedding, EWC dates come out. I'm in Saudi on the day of the wedding. That was the hardest phone call I've ever had to make. To say, I've been with your daughter for a year and a half. You know, I've really gotten integrated into the family, and now I'm not going to be at the wedding because I've got to go to Saudi Arabia to play a video game. Very, very difficult conversation, and it's all because there's no forward planning
Yep.
from these organisations. They just drop it on you and expect you to make the time for it. So yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. Hopefully it changes, but knowing sim racing, it's been like that for as long as I can remember. I don't see it changing. Um, but yeah, I guess lastly, the last question I have for you before we let you go is, what is your favourite series that you've ever competed in, and why?
Um, I'm incredibly 50-50 between SRO and Rennsport because they were two very different things and two very different stages of my career. Um, I would say in one aspect, Rennsport because of how how big it was and the grid was just out of this world. The grid in I think everybody's opinion was better than F1 Esports. Like we have the very best in the world going against each other. It was like an all-star grid. But then at the same time I had ACC where it was so competitive. Much more competitive than people realized. especially the iRacing scene. They thought ACC, ah, it's kind of a new game. They're not that good. Blah blah blah. And that wasn't the case. That absolutely wasn't the case. That championship was so fun. Got a bit interesting when Bop came into it. That's for sure. Bop was always a little bit ridiculous from now and again. I think is the right word. You could lose a championship over it, but it was just the best thing I've ever competed in. I think is SRO. Those endurance races, those sprint races. The big streamers, the viewership on it was huge. It was something special. And during that SRO time, I started up Hymo with Charlie, and we had an amazing startup. And that SRO is what kickstarted that and made that's what made ACC special. It really did. It made all of that special for me. Was SRO. It gave me my life right now. It absolutely gave me my life right now, and I owe a lot to it. So I would have to say SRO.
Yeah, I think for me it was probably, I don't even know what mine would be looking back. Probably Carrera Cup GB. I think that was always really good. The tire cheese that existed in PESC never existed there because we had a different quality format and it was fixed setup, and then yeah, there was definitely some questionable stewarding decisions over the years, but I think yeah, I'm sad I never got to try ACC properly though, because it in that 1.8 era it did look really really good, and it's something I wish I had time to try before it sort of fell off the map. But yeah, no, I mean it definitely did look like a great championship. But look, we have taken up enough of your time today. We'll let you go, but yeah, feel free to plug all your socials. Let us know what you're doing and where we can find you.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. Especially given what's happened recently, I think there's a lot of different opinions flying about, right? Um, and I just want to say, anybody that has watched this video and has taken the time to go through and perhaps make your own opinion, thank you. I appreciate it, and thank you, Kevin, for being an amazing friend and a great teammate in the past. So I really appreciate it. I'm not going to plug any socials. I'm just going to say I'm going to start doing content hopefully in the future. I've been wanting to do it for a while. I've been starting to go into it and then I come back out of it. So yeah, I need to I need to get on it. I really do. So hopefully you'll see more of me in the future. Um, be it iRacing or LMU or whatever. Maybe Rennsport, who knows? So yeah, and best of luck to you, Kevin, of course.
Yeah, cheers. I think there's going to be a collaboration in the future for sure on your channel. Got to
Of
happen.
course. Of
All right,
course.
mate. Well, thanks again for hopping on, and yeah, we'll chat to you next time.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin.